Hi everyone, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be talking about The Gathering Storm, Book 12 in the Wheel of Time, and I'm going to be doing my spoiler chat as I do for every book, and I'm really excited about this one. But just to reiterate sort of my rules for these videos, not rules, just like things to be observed, because this is my first time reading through the Wheel of Time. So what I ask you is that if you choose to leave a comment and tell me about your thoughts on this video, it is greatly appreciated, but please do not go past any spoilers for book 12 because I have not read past this book. So I don't want to see any spoilers for future books in the comments, but I do so appreciate you being here and sharing your thoughts with me. So that is just the main thing to start with. But let's just get right into talking about this book because I did love it. So I gave this book 5 stars, and of course the thing to be addressed is that this is the first Robert Jordan, Brandon Sanderson combination book in the series. And there was a really nice little foreword in the front of this book. Even though I have listened to Brandon Sanderson speak about this story before, and I've heard the story of how he was selected to complete the series, it was still really nice to have that little introduction in the start of this book, and I really liked it. And the transition to Sanderson I felt was for the most part pretty smooth, and I will talk about that a little bit more later in the video for one particular character, but I thought that he did a really great job, and this is the first 5-star that I'm giving to a Wheel of Time book since The Shadow Rising. And don't get me wrong, there have been some great books between The Shadow Rising and this book, but I was giving some 4s, some 4.5s, but no book quite got to that 5-star level until this one again. So of course I'm really pleased with that. For me, 3 of the main things that I loved about this book was that, for one, it was a really great balance of character and plot. So that is one thing that I loved to see. And another thing is that you can really see things starting to converge. And that makes sense because this is either book 12 or the first installment of the 3 parts of what was supposed to be the final book. So if you consider this as the first part of a final book, then of course you are going to want to see plot threads starting to converge. You're really getting ready to wrap up the series. And so that is definitely what we were starting to look at here. I really enjoyed it. And then the third thing is that this book had some of my absolute favorite character moments in the series so far. And that definitely builds on the strength of what we've been working up to because of the fact that we've spent so long with these characters. The character moments that are happening now can really have an impact, and they did. So I just thought that there were so many of those that were so well done. And I think that that is what I'm going to stick to for general comments because I could keep talking, but I want to get into the nitty-gritty and the specifics of like the actual storylines from this book. So we pretty much have 4 major storylines in this book. We really have 2 that are the main focus, and that is Rand and Aguain. But then the other 2 that I'm counting are Matt and Tujuan because they both have their fair share of perspective chapters, like POV chapters, and they're both doing things that were important enough to merit their own storylines in this book. But I'm gonna start with Rand, and honestly, this is just the order that I made my notes, but everything kind of converges at the end, so I will talk about the ending kind of together. But for Rand, this was a great book for his character for me because I do find it fascinating what he has gone through and the mental changes that he has gone through, and he has slowly been closing himself off to not trust very many people, to repress his emotions, but we spent a long time with him during this log where I felt like we were kind of in limbo, and I thought what was happening with his character was interesting, but it wasn't exactly like captivating or compelling for me. But the changes that he went through in this book were very compelling, and I really liked reading them. And they were drawing me forward to see what was going to happen with his character development. And I want to start with the incident with Semiraj, because that is really the inciting incident for what happens with Rand's character in this book. And the descriptions and the details of Semiraj escaping and having him collared were truly like vivid and terrifying, and like the powerlessness that Rand feels being a callback to when he was kidnapped by the Aes Sedai was really well done. And it, like, him almost killing Min because he doesn't have control is genuinely terrifying. So I just thought that whole scene was so intense and emotional and really well done. And that is a huge moment for Rand. That is a turning point in like a negative direction, but it's a turning point. And he manages to embrace the true power and obliterates Semiraj and Elza out of existence using balefire, which is scary in and of itself. But this scene was intense. And from there, Rand, like in this book for me, Rand was truly scary and unsettling. And I think that that's the difference. Every time we were with Rand, I felt something towards him, even if it was my own fear for who he was as a character and that nobody could get through to him. He really made me feel things. And he's got some huge development in both directions this book, but it doesn't feel forced because you can see exactly why he reacts to the collaring and the incident with Min and everything the way that he does. It is very obvious why he reacts that way, even though everybody around him knows that this is bad for him. It's understandable. And then, like at the end, I'm not going to talk about the end of his storyline yet, but that is something that he fights for too. So that's a great achievement. But like, let's move on to the meeting with Tujuan, because he finally gets to have his actual meeting with the Daughter of the Nine Moons. And at this meeting, he has just been hardened by all that has just happened to him, especially touching the true power and creating this dark aura around himself. I still don't fully understand what happened there, but I know that him touching the true power is not a good thing, aside from the fact that it helped him to escape. Like, obviously that is a direct positive result, but still a bad idea for him to go further touching the true power. But the meeting was really interesting, and I've always loved it when there is a situation in which two characters meet, but they don't know something very important about each of the others. And in this case, Tujuan knows that Mat and Rand were friends and know each other. But Rand does not know something very important, which is that Mat and Tujuan are married. And so there's something about this whole dynamic that I really enjoyed, and it was, Nynaeve was involved here as well, and I really, really loved the interaction between these three and the way that Tujuan is behaving. Like, she is behaving in Shan-Chan custom, but she is also pushing the envelope a little bit and behaving in ways that the high blood of her own culture don't expect her to, and it's really, really interesting to watch. But I understand why this meeting went poorly, because Tujuan can sense the like cold hardness that has taken up root in Rand, and he needs to develop past that before anything can be made headway like with the Shan-Chan. So we move from that to like Ered Doman, where Rand is trying to help the city, he's trying to find the king, he's trying to find the council members, but mainly he's trying to find Graendal. And Nynaeve is sort of trying to help him with this, and I found her storyline really interesting because I've honestly missed following Nynaeve. She was annoying to me personally in earlier books, but then she mellowed out a little bit and I started to really like her, and then we kind of veered away from following her for quite a while. So I'm happy that we're getting back to Nynaeve, and I really liked her plan and the way that she found that Chandler's boy that had compulsion from Graendal and allowed them to like perhaps actually be able to find her. And what Graendal does to people is just terrifying and disgusting. Like, it is very, very creepy to think about the fact that once you unravel the compulsion, there is no human left. Like, that is very, very sad. And so when they finally do successfully trace Graendal to this like outpost, this fortress that used to be used but now is kind of forgotten about, like, Rand brings Min and Nynaeve with him, and when he uses balefire on this entire building, it is like, it's very horrifying. And on some level, like, from a objective perspective, I understand his reasoning, and like, it is ruthlessly smart what he did, but that doesn't stop it from being horrifying and completely indicative of Rand's frame of mind and where he is in terms of completely suppressing his emotions and deciding that he needs to be made of stone in order to survive this. And he is injuring himself grievously, but he's just trying so hard not to feel it. So I think that this is something that's so interesting because this event, him using balefire so much, was necessary for the plot, but will definitely have repercussions on Rand's emotional state and character going forward. And so in terms of the main events for Rand in this book, he leaves Ered Doman and goes back to Tyr, where he is welcomed, and he is, I guess, marshalling forces here to ride north towards the Borderlands to fight the last battle. But while he is in the Stone of Tyr and I guess like waiting there because he's in the process of preparing, Nynaeve and Cadswan bring Tam to him. And their conversation is so close to going well, and I felt that the scene was so heartfelt. I loved it. The conversation where Tam is really kind of getting through to his son. Like, he can see that Rand is still in there, but he's like understandably scared and confused by what has happened to his son and how much he's changed. And it's so heartbreaking the way that Rand recoils from any mention of the Aes Sedai and Cadswan, because I understand why he does so, but the part that's heartbreaking to me is that that causes him to think that Tam wasn't being sincere, where Tam obviously was. Like, he was genuinely caring for his son, and Rand deserves to know that that was genuine and that he deserves that kind of care. And so that's why it's heartbreaking to me, not because Rand distrusts the Aes Sedai, but because that just immediately causes him to think that this was all a plot and it meant nothing. Like, he meant nothing to them. They just want to use him. And I was so rooting for Tam when he went back in there to yell at like the Aes Sedai, because I like Cadswan. I think she's a really interesting character, and I think that she's smart, and in a lot of ways she's right in what she wants, but it's so not the way to go about it with Rand because of his trauma. And this whole thing, like, this whole ending sequence after Rand leaves Tam is so amazing, because Rand very nearly hurts Tam, and that hurt me, but I never really truly believed that Rand was going to kill him. I thought Rand might accidentally hurt him, but I'm glad that he didn't. But Rand going to Falm, or it's Falm, right? Rand going to Falm and intending to just destroy this Shan-Chan stronghold, but he can't, because he realizes that people are actually living in peace. And it's such a contrast, and it's such an interesting exploration where Rand thinks that things should be terrible where the Shan-Chan rule because they're his rivals and they're invaders and they're conquerors, but it's actually not. And the people there show him, like when he tries to seize the source and he feels sick, the people there show him actual caring, and he knows that he can't destroy the city. And it's like, it completely shifts his mindset. And then you end up on Dragon Mount with Rand basically just needing to think and trying to get away from everything and trying to put up more and more walls and build himself even thicker into like this icy exterior, but he can't. And he ends up basically uniting with Lews Therin, and it's Lews Therin that finally gets through to him, and that was really emotional. Him basically saying that the reason that we live is so that we can try again. Like, why would we live again if it wasn't to do better and maybe to love and to have a life? And Rand finally breaking through and actually like laughing and showing some emotion and finally coming back to himself. Like, that's a hard-fought journey for him. And I loved it. I thought that that was amazing. And I know that there are plenty of people who have Rand as their favorite character, and I've always liked Rand and thought that he was interesting, but I have never, not once, felt it like this until now. I loved this, and I still don't think that Rand is my favorite character in the series, but I certainly feel a hell of a lot more emotion for him now after this book than I did before. So next, I'm gonna go to Mat's storyline because his is a little bit more isolated, even though there are ties to others, but his is a little bit more isolated, and then Tujuan's and Aguain's are rather intertwined because of their significance to each other and the actions that are taken on both sides. So Mat was interesting in this book. Like, I liked his storyline, but the thing that I want to point out is that I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like Sanderson had a little bit of trouble with getting the feel of Mat right. And I think that he settled in a little bit more as the book went on and did a little bit better. But in a way, I felt like I was reading almost a caricature of what Mat was supposed to be. And not a caricature because it's not that dramatic, but it was a subtle shift where felt like I was reading an actor trying to play Mat the way that they thought that Mat would be, instead of it just feeling like Mat. But like I said, I did think that it got better as the book went on. Maybe I just got used to it, maybe it actually got better, but regardless, I did think that Mat started to feel a little bit more natural as the book went on. And Mat is one of my favorite characters, so I'm happy that he started to feel a little bit more like himself later on. But I did really like his storyline. I was not prepared for where that was going at all. His storyline, basically the purpose of it was to say, this is the Dark One's touch on the world, also to say him and his band are making progress, and then finally he had a connection with Varen, which we of course find out more about from Egwene's point of view. But their storyline in the town was truly creepy, and I really enjoyed that because I did not know where that was going. I was not prepared. I thought that it was really well constructed, like with the tension and the anxiety factor. Like, as it gets closer to sunset in this town, you're wondering, like, what's gonna happen? Why don't these people allow any visitors overnight? Like, this is very strange. And it was pretty gruesome. Like, it was very gruesome because this, like, whatever it is, this is somehow the Dark One's touch. I don't even know what to think. Like, but I'm glad that they made it out, and I'm glad that they lived to see the other side and to have it explained to them a little bit. And I was just really compelled by this storyline and what they endured. And I liked the fact that after that we see Mat discover who has been handing out pictures of him, which is Varen, and this was of course before we see Varen with Aguain, and at this point I was questioning her because I have always liked Varen, and I have never completely trusted Varen, but I've always liked her, and I was really hoping that she was not a dark friend. And obviously that is a whole complexity in itself, but I was very interested in what she wanted Mat to do like 10 days from now or 30 days from now or whatever length of time it was that they negotiated. And so in the next book, because of course Mat isn't going to know what happened in the White Tower, I'm really looking forward to Mat opening that message from her and seeing what it said. And I'm also really looking forward to them making more progress on their goal towards going to rescue Moraine. And given that the next book is called Towers of Midnight, I feel like that's referencing the towers that they're going to, and that we're going to see that. So I'm really excited to know what Mat is going to be about. He's always interested me. He's kind of a wild card because he's not really beholden to the structures of this world. Like, Aguain is part of the institution of the White Tower now. Rand is part of, like, well, Rand is basically conquering, but he is beholden to a lot of people because of what he is and who he has become. But Mat is just kind of doing his thing. I think that's why he interests me so much. So yeah, like, I don't have too much more to say about him because his storyline, like I mentioned, rather isolated, but I really did like it. Okay, so we're gonna move on to Tujuan because Tujuan and Aguain are intertwined, but Aguain is the second like really big storyline. So let's just talk about Tujuan's storyline a little bit first. So I thought that it was really fascinating to watch her become Empress, and it's even more fascinating that the inciting event for that was after meeting with Rand, because she was still the daughter of the Nine Moons when she met with him, but afterwards she decided that it was her time to take up the mantle of Empress, and I can't honestly at this moment remember what her new name is. I'm still calling her Tujuan, but it's obviously very interesting that you take a new name. We've learned a little bit about that in the Shan culture, about what it can mean when you take on a new name, like a new position, etc. And I think that she is so interesting in this position because I think that Tujuan is committed to Shan culture, but she's also like reasonable and unconventional enough, maybe to do with her time with Matt, that I still feel like they may be able to ally eventually, despite everything that happened in this book. And I know that very dramatic things happened in this book and it's gonna take some work, but I still feel like, I don't know, the Shan are so interesting. Like, they're honorable in their own way, even though they treat people who can channel like dogs. That's what's terrifying about them, or at least that's one of the things that's terrifying about them. We obviously don't like that, but Tujuan is different. I feel this, like, I don't know. And I can't help but root for her personally, even if I'm not necessarily rooting for the Shan overall. But in truth, what I'm actually rooting for is for them to ally with the rest of the world and then the entirety of them to face the shadow together. And attacking the White Tower is bold, but I can see the strategy in it from Tujuan's point of view. And when she explains herself versus Rand's position and how she wants to strike now, like to weaken him, like I'm like, I get it. Like, from two warring sides, I totally understand your decision to do this, even if I don't like what it's going to do to Egwene, but I don't feel particularly much towards like nameless Aes Sedai. Like, I don't want them to be taken as Daman. Like, I don't like that, but it's easier to root for Tujuan, I guess, because we were in her head and we know her personally, and she treated Tylan's son, oh god, what's his name? She treated him well, and I like the way that she's running things, I guess. So we got a very limited amount of time from her point of view, but there were just so many important things that happened in her point of view. So just wanted to do this quick little overview. But of course, her attack on the White Tower brings us to the connection with Egwene's storyline. So I'm going to go into Egwene's storyline, but I'm going to start from the beginning. So for Egwene, at the start of this book, Elaida has imprisoned her and accused her of being a dark friend because near the ending of Knife of Dreams, Egwene attended that dinner with Elaida and a bunch of sitters, like very important Aes Sedai in the tower, and she refused to back down, and Elaida physically assaulted her, maybe breaking the rules of like being Aes Sedai and maybe not, because if Elaida claims that Egwene is a dark friend, then she did not break the rules of the power. So that is a very strategic claim on her part, that if she genuinely believed that what she was doing was right, then no, she did not break the rules. So we start with Egwene in a very questionable situation, and we really feel for her because she's thinking about how Rand must have felt when he was confined too. And Egwene is really strong, but this is still an emotional time for her. And so she is dream walking as she does, and she is talking to Swan and having a meeting with her when she is unceremoniously torn from the dream. And this is a sign that something is wrong. Actually, I can't remember what point this happened at, whether this happened when she was released from her cell or whether this happened at the start of the attack. I think I might be getting mixed up. So I'll scratch that for a second. But regardless, Egwene is released and she's gonna be allowed back, like, to kind of the way she was before, like to be a novice in the tower. because Elida has decided that she can scapegoat Sylviana instead. And I love Sylviana for this. I always thought that her and Aguain had a really interesting relationship in the sense that Sylviana definitely came to respect Aguain after all of those beatings. I still don't love that in this world there's so much physical abuse as a way to enforce things, but I did find Sylviana and Aguain's relationship very interesting, and I love that Sylviana stood up for her. And I'm not surprised at all that Elida decided to scapegoat someone, because she can try and just pin all the blame on this person and then her problems will go away, even though that's not really how it works. But the important thing about Aguain being released is that when she is back in her own room in the new novice quarters, we have the visit from Verin. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite scenes in the entire series so far, bar none. It was fantastic. So when Verin gets there, she says exactly what I was afraid she would always say, and that is that she is of the Black Aja. And like I said, I never fully trusted Verin, just because I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember whether she had ever been identified as one of the Black, but I really wanted to trust her because I really liked her. And this entire sequence just made me so happy because Verin is so smart, and I can't believe the level of dedication that it would have taken to be part of the Black Aja for years and years and years and gather all this information, all of this research secretly. And it really just got to me as someone who loved research myself, that Verin said that a lot of brown sisters don't have a chance to take on a project that will actually change the world for the better, but her research, she hopes, actually will change the world for the better. That is so, I don't know, that almost brought tears to my eyes. I love Verin, and I love that she was so smart to find the loophole in the oaths that she took, and she is obviously showing the ultimate dedication by sacrificing herself in order to pass this information along to Aguain. And another reason that I love this is because it just goes to show how well Aguain has done, how well respected she is, that she is the one that is deemed worthy of receiving this bounty of information and how important it is. I don't know, I can't even say enough about this scene with Verin because I loved it so much, and it just, I'm happy that it happened before the attack because I could just enjoy it and savor it, and then not long after that, the Shanchan raid starts, the attack on the tower starts, and everyone in the White Tower is in danger, and so we have, the action going on in the rebel camp with Siuan and Gareth Bryne and Gawain leading their rescue party because they have no idea what's happening to Aguain. They want to get her out while this chaos is going on, but Aguain during the attack is a legend. She does amazing things, and she is so smart too. She knows to link with other novices so that she can direct their power, and then she also gets that terangrial, or I believe it's a terangrial or a satangrial, I can't remember, but the one that allows her to wield more power, and she is just absolutely basically holding the fort by herself. The rest of the Aes Sedai in the tower are not doing as well, any of them as a whole, as one Egwene Alver is doing. And I loved watching what she did during that attack. I was so proud of her. But then, of course, Siuan and Gawain and Gareth Bryne, they rescue her against her wishes. And I have mixed feelings about this because I understand why they did what they did, but then I also understand why Egwene is so angry and how she feels like she's lost her chance. But it turned out to be the right move, or exactly what they needed, because Egwene, things move pretty fast at this part of the book, and I was enjoying it. So Egwene, because of what happened and what Siuan, Gawain, and Bryne decided to do, is able to capture and execute a bunch of members of the Black Aja inside the rebel camp. And so that was a very important move on her part. And I loved the sequence of her getting other sitters of the hall to swear new oaths to make sure that they're not dark friends, to make sure that they're true. And the reveal of who is Black Aja is very dramatic and sometimes emotional, and I really like that because it could be anybody, which is honestly, it's really scary for these characters, but it was done really well. Oh, and before we get to the ending, just my quick comment is Siuan and Gareth, I love them. That's a yes from me. I'm really glad that she bonded him as her warder. And Aguain and Aguain are sort of a no from me, but it's mostly just because I don't really get it. I don't see that they had enough time together to feel this strongly about each other, especially someone as focused as Aguain. I feel like her storyline should just be what she aims to do. I guess I understand why Aguain is in love with her, but I don't really understand this relationship that they have. And maybe that's just me, maybe other people like them, but I'm glad that Aguain at least got a little bit more complex in this book. I really wasn't liking him too much up until this point. He did redeem himself a little bit, but I still don't care too much about him, and I just don't get them together. So of course, the last big climax for this book is that Aguain gathers all of the Aes Sedai on her side and prepares to attack Tar Valon because she thinks that that is going to be the only way and the last method available to them. But something very shocking happens, which is that the Tower decides that they also want to recognize her as Amyrlin Seat. And I loved this moment of triumph. This made me so happy. This and Rand's revelation on Dragonmount came together for such a bittersweet ending to this book because there was a lot of pain and suffering that happened throughout the course of it, but then there's some real triumph here where I'm really, really happy with where our characters are at. I was very happy that Aguain chose Sylviana as her keeper, especially after Sylviana standing up for Aguain while Aguain was imprisoned, and I loved the ending of this book. So I think that that's all I have to say. I hope that I have appropriately expressed my emotions because I was so happy. I really did love this book. This is the first time in a long time that I have sat down and read like 100 pages of a Wheel of Time book at a time because I was just so compelled to get through it. I was enjoying my time so much. So of course I'm very, very pleased that this was 5 stars for me, and I'm really, really looking forward to starting Towers of Midnight, which I will hopefully be doing within the next week. And you will be seeing this video next week, I think, so I may have already started Towers of Midnight by the time this goes up. Regardless though, that is going to be it for this one. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you would like to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I have information about my Discord, socials, and Patreon down in the description as always. And that is it for this one, so I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!